Good afternoon, folks. So today, as is disturbingly common for my content on Terra Nova Tuesdays, I'm going to be talking about more residential school bullshit. In this case, the story we're talking about is this. Oops, sorry, my bad. Getting used to the new layout a little bit. There is plans for a residential school memorial garden on the grounds of First Light in St. John's. Now, the problem here that I have more than anything else is that this is what the current building looks like. Okay, it's an old, possibly a church, possibly an old Mason's Hall. And I do see Bezik's point about my resolution. And I'm going to see if there's something I can do about that in a real hurry here. No, okay. We won't bother with that then. So, unfortunately, this is what we have for now. But this is what the current location looks like, which I think is quite nice. It's a bit of old St. John's architecture that they're going to turn into this. And just for the record, so I can show it to you a bit more clearly. Yeah. Oh, that's a bit too big. There we go. So this is the proposed new facility for First Light St. John's. Now, the problem I have with this is that they're spending, the provincial government, is going to spend, or has announced, $9.9 million. Oh, sorry, the federal government has announced $9.9 million in funding for the organization, the majority of which will go towards the renovation of their offices on Kittivity Road. Yeah. The big problem I have with this is that they're turning it into a monstrosity. And I have a further point to make as well, which I think you folks will probably love. And I will actually have to bring this back into the other tab, just to bring this particular part of the image up. For those of you who don't know what it looks like, yeah, let me show you how cultural appropriation is actually working in this case. That symbol should be rather close by now. There we are. Now, does that not look somewhat similar to that? Yeah, it's almost like they've decided to take a Western white religious symbol, because that is a religious symbol from neo-pagan Western religion, and they've decided to culturally appropriate it. Don't we get told off for doing things like that? Yeah. Also, I don't remember blue being a traditional native color. Red, white, black, yellow. That's how I was taught, anyway. Yeah. But anyway, just to go through this story just a little bit more. On the exterior of the facility will be a residential school memorial garden. A memorial garden, you say? Could someone kindly tell me exactly where in this particular image you see space for a memorial garden? And for the record, Kittivity Road is also some of the most expensive real estate in St. John's. Yeah. Yeah. So they're going to tear down a building that is potentially a heritage site in order to put up a gigantic virtue signal. Yeah. I have enough problem with that. Now let me ask you another. Now let me just ask, my search engine another question. If my flags were lowered. Residential schools. 5 residential schools. Yes. Oh, no, that's wrong. Yes. These lawsuits concerned 5 residential schools in Newfoundland and Labrador. Where were they located? Let's see if we can find out. Oh, that's a very pretty... Do you have a map showing us where these residential schools were? Look at that, they do. And of course I have to open that image in a new place. Oh, that's interesting. Look at that. This is the border of Labrador. And they're not even showing Newfoundland. Why, it's almost like, and bear with me here, I know this is a bit of a shock, it's almost like there were never any residential schools in Newfoundland. Yeah. Why are you building a memorial garden for residential schools in Newfoundland? Strikes me a bit strange. Let's just have another scroll through this story. So the largest of the renovations, by the way, guys, 1 N in fucking renovations, not 2. This guy. So the executive director, Stacey House, says they have a steering committee that's been working with Mills and Wright. For those of you who don't know, Mills and Wright is an architecture firm, landscape architecture. I wonder where they're located. Are they located in Newfoundland? Let's just go back a page and just check their about page. Apparently based in Newfoundland and Labrador. Okay. In that case, I will put my face back on screen and go, good job, First Light. You hired local. You're doing better than our provincial government. And yes, I am clamping down quite a lot of the invective today because, hey, this is on YouTube. Now, speaking of which, if you would kindly go and check out that link, that one right there, the one I'm poking with my finger, go and check out that link and kindly subscribe. Like, share, and subscribe, obviously, here on YouTube. But the reason I'm actually encouraging people to look at Rumble is because once I hit 100 subs on Rumble, and I think I'm at about a dozen, probably, maybe that might be a high estimate. But once I hit 100 subs on Rumble, I'm going to live stream there too. And the things I will say on Rumble will not be the things I say on YouTube. Because Rumble's terms of service actually make sense. Rumble actually treats itself as a platform, not a publisher. So they don't throw a lot of control on their content. Now, obviously, I'm not going to get on there and tell racist jokes. That's what Gab is for. But that said, I actually am very impressed that they went out of their way to contract a Newfoundland firm to do the work. So, good job. I imagine they're not cheap, but all the same, I'm very impressed. Now, I'll bring you over to the Twitter page. There we are. And we'll have a scroll down. Oh, I apparently have notifications. That's nice. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, well, you guys know my name anyway. And you can find me using that symbol. So let's have a look at the thread here. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Fence here either, but this is a bit sick. 4 likes, 1 retweet. Well, it's Newfoundland. You know, we don't make federal news for a reason, or national news rather. But let me just throw myself back on screen here. Okay. You guys have heard me say over and over and over again that these mass graves are suspected mass graves. Okay? Yet, in the media, they're treated like it's completely confirmed. That every single one of these 1,000 plus, 2,000 plus, whatever, is somehow confirmed as a mass grave. Yet, if I look at the history of the mass grave investigations on Wikipedia, and I do apologize for not having this link ready to go, but let's see here, where are we? Okay. Just adding the term residential schools. Okay, let me try that earlier. I see what I'm doing wrong. I'm in the wrong part of the search bar. Residential. Huh. Okay, let's try Wikipedia. Nope. Okay. Canada mass graves investigation. Mass grave Wikipedia. Here we are. Okay. Let me just bring this up for you guys. Okay, so this is the Canadian Indian Residential School gravesites. And we have the investigation of unmarked graves. And I will full screen this so that you guys can see this as well as I do. Let me just transform this a little bit, stretch it to the screen. Here we go. Now, again, oh, can you not see my cursor on that? Oh, okay. Well, if you look at the eastern part of the country, you're not seeing a lot of suspected sites, are you? You know, in fact, not anything from Ontario east, which, bear with me, is central Canada. Eastern Canada starts at the border of Labrador and the Maritimes, as far as I'm concerned. Quebec and Ontario are central Canada. But that's me. Now, if we go back to this particular table here, the summary of suspected unmarked graves at residential schools, one of the big names was Kamloops, right here, and Kamloops Indian Residential School. They have found 200, and let me point that out, suspected unmarked graves, and that number is, again, 200, and over here there is a blank for the number of confirmed human remains. So, yet again, we're being found guilty of something that hasn't even been confirmed. As fucked as Canada's legal system is, it's still better than this. You don't hold someone responsible for something you can't prove they did. And even the native activists are saying, why are there no investigations being done? They want to know as much as I do. And the reason I'm angry about this is because my entire culture in Canada, my people, whatever term you want to use, we've all been tarred with the same genocidal brush. Yet, for some reason, the people who want to keep that tension going clearly don't want the blame directed at who actually deserves it. The Canadian government and the churches that ran those schools. I have never been part of either of those. I was raised Anglican. And I'm an atheist now. Also, I was born in the 70s. Most of the residential schools were already closed by then. How do I need, as a taxpayer in Canada, to foot the bill for something that was done generations ago? That began generations ago. Granted, it only ended really completely, I think, late 90s, early 2000s was the last residential school closure. I'm sure there was not a lot of abuse going on then. Now, a lot of the other things that are said, all the stories of abuse and things, as much as I would like to be able to take witness testimony, these are anecdotal statements. We only have the word of people, sometimes people in a family who heard the story from their ancestor who has since passed on. Sometimes that's the only authority we have to trust about these stories. Now, here's the part a lot of people are not going to like, and I'm scratching my head because I have a bit of a dry skin spot. It's getting on to winter. We're actually getting our second snowfall right now. Why is it that I've seen story after story where they reference the idea that, oh, these children died and the families never heard about it? Was it because the church didn't go out of their way to try to notify people? Possibly. Was it because the families were unfindable? Possibly. More doubtful. Was it possibly because the community that these children came from was not a healthy environment for children, and, you know, they had to be removed in some cases for their own safety, for their own well-being. Maybe. Unfortunately, that's what we're left with, is a whole shit ton of maybes. And as long as there are maybes, nobody should be held responsible. What should be done is people should stop fucking apologizing for things, stop virtue signaling about things that have not been confirmed, and do the work of actually confirming them. As far as I know, still, there has not been a shovel put in the ground. Oh, but ground penetrating radar shows lumps in the ground. That's all. It just shows the basic shape of the ground. It's not like you look through the lens of a ground penetrating radar and you can see the outline of a skull. That's not how it works. So yeah. And if there's someone out there who's an expert in ground penetrating radar and wants to challenge me on that point, by all means, I will have you on. And we can discuss it. By all means. And matter of fact, I will make that an open invitation. If there is someone out there who would like to discuss this issue online, live on my show, by all means, let me know. You can find all the contact details in the description. In the meantime, this is more than enough crap that has been laid on white Canadians. When these residential schools were, these supposed unmarked graves at residential schools were first discovered, and I have to use air quotes because, again, these are not confirmed grave sites. But when these sites were first discovered, or first announced, what happened? Did people start going, oh, well, we need an investigation, you know, you need to get the bodies out of the ground, do DNA testing to find out which tribes these kids came from and get them back to the bands that they belong to so that they can rest in their ancestral grounds? No. People went and started burning fucking churches. In some cases, indigenous churches. Churches that indigenous people went to for comfort from their religion. And when I say their religion, I mean whichever flavor of Christianity they happen to follow. Yeah. No one was burning teepees, no one was burning sweat lodges, but they were burning churches. Some people were caught. I hope some people were charged. I'm not 100% sure, and to be honest, I'm a little sick of dealing with this topic. So today, I'm not going to investigate whether or not people have been actually charged and convicted for arson in these cases. But I do know there were calls for investigations all the way around, from the supposed grave sites all the way up to who did this fire at this church. And a lot of those investigations were either pushed aside, ignored, or completely dismissed. So yeah, as a Canadian, not a proud one, as a Newfoundlander, very proud one, an ethnic Newfoundlander for that matter, and just as a man in general, if this actually was done to children, it's an outrage. Period. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you harm a child, you're a piece of fucking filth. And you deserve to be punished for it. That said, you cannot hold an entire society responsible for the actions of one segment. Does everyone still blame the Germans for the Nazis? No. That would be unfair. Do people still blame white men for slavery? Yeah. Who ended the slave trade? What nation fought a civil war because of the slave trade? Or at least partly because of the slave trade? What empire went out of its way to shut down slavery on all of its territories? It wasn't China. In any case, folks, the thing that matters most is not reconciliation, it's truth. And when we have a prime minister who has the nerve to look up and say that there is no Canadian culture, and turns around and calls what was done to these native children assuming it was actually done the way that the story is presented to us. When he calls it a cultural genocide, it makes you wonder how he even defines culture, considering he can't see one from the country he was born in. In any event, I do hope you're having a good day. I hope you continue to have good days. And rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.